Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Technical Tim here, and I want to thank everyone so much who's been liking all my videos and subscribing to the channel. And I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up or subscribe if you haven't already. And I am just going to do a quick final thoughts video, and if you have any questions, just comment in the live chat. And I only go like 20-30 minutes or so on these. I don't go too long. But I'm gonna go through just each fight and kind of just I don't have any plays on this card. I actually just made a play for next week, actually, but I don't have any plays on this card. But I'll kind of change it up and just kind of say what my leans are, even though I don't have strong opinions on this card, and maybe I'll just comment on a few things that I noticed as I researched the fight a little bit. But first fight of the night, Shayna Dobson and Priscilla Cachoeira, and I mean, it's pretty low level, but it will be fun, I guess. Like, Cachoeira comes forward and throws down. So, yeah, I could see it going either way. Cachoeira is just a little too hittable. Like, she has some of the worst defensive striking stats you'll see. Like, everyone just tees off on her pretty much. So, I think Shayna's defense will probably be the main difference here, but you never know. Like, Cachoeira's tough and will come forward and will definitely try to win, and maybe she can land some strikes, and still a women's striking fight, so maybe it will it could get interesting, but I don't see much value on either side, to be honest. I could see Dobson kind of really fucking her up, honestly, but yeah, whatever it is. Angela Hill and Loma Lugbunmi, I'll just call her Loma. This is a good fight. I'm excited for this fight. I've actually always kind of thought Angela Hill was a little underrated. Actually, I played her recently against Hannah Cyphers, and she just manages to consistently land a lot of strikes, and she's broken the 100 significant strike mark a lot, and I like her distance, and her distance control on the feet, and I think at range she's going to have an advantage here. And even though Loma kind of beat Albu pretty clearly, she was outlanded on the distance strikes by like 10 strikes. I forget the exact numbers. I think it was like 40-30 or 35-20. I can't remember totally. So I tend to think Angela Hill will probably be an advantage there. And she's a little bigger, and I trust her to be better on the mat than Loma, even though both girls don't really land a lot of takedowns. But I still could see Loma doing pretty well in the clinch, and that's where she scored most of her strikes against Albu. So she could definitely compete there, and she's pretty skilled, so I could see this being competitive, and it's still a women's striking fight, and I don't see like a monster difference in the skills between these two. So I'm okay with the line, because I do think Angela's a little bigger, a little more proven, and she consistently lands strikes in the UFC, so she's reliable in that sense, but no strong. I think I lean Hill, but I'm not. Her line's like -175. I think the line's reasonable. Kai Kara-France and Tyson Nam. I think Kai Kara-France, he's a pretty good striker, and all of his metrics are good. Brandon Moreno's, he's a fucking thorn in my side. I played against him. I like target after him a lot, and he's really improved, and he kind of proved me wrong. But I played Sergio Pettis against him. I played Pantoja against him, and then I played Askarov against him, and I lucked out because I thought Moreno won that fight, and it ended up being a draw. And then I played against him again, and I played Kai Kara-France against him, but Moreno is obviously really, really improved, so Moreno just kind of fucks shit up for me. He like, I just never read his fights well. Kind of reminds me of Michelle Watterson. I can't read her fights well either, generally. But, so back to Kai Kara-France. In that fight, yeah, like Moreno beat him up in that fight a little bit, even though it was still very, very competitive. Moreno just landed the harder shots down the stretch in round 2 and 3. But he has shown me that he can consistently land a lot of strikes every fight, really. And Tyson Nam only landed like 40 strikes against Sergio Pettis, and I feel like if Kai France just kind of avoids the big shots. He'll probably be the more high output fighter and probably win. It's also in his home country, so I'm sure anytime he lands, the crowd will go nuts, so that will probably help him too. But the line's probably okay there as well. Callum Potter and Kanan Song, I tend to think Kanan's going to probably whoop him a little bit. I actually sort of kind of thought about playing Song because I just didn't like what I saw from Potter's grappling, even in his win against Patolo. A lot of it was Patolo making mistakes, and Song at least scrambles up very well. But the thing I don't like about Song is he'll when someone gets into his hips, he'll go for like a guillotine and allow them to get even deeper in to his hips. So I could see some takedowns landing here, but if he kind of just disengages, he should probably be fine in some of those clinch situations. And I do think his get-ups are good enough to get back up against Potter, and I think he's got a pretty big advantage on the feet. So he should probably win, but again, none of these fights I have any plays in. Jake Matthews and Mech, I just taped this. It's one of those fights where it's kind of hard for me to get a read on Mech's grappling because Usman and Fabinski are two of the best wrestlers in the division, but I generally liked what I saw from Mech's grappling against Jordan Meehan, and I think Matthews is a more comparable top controller to like a Jordan Meehan than an Usman or a Fabinski. Like Matthews just doesn't have many mechanisms of control once he gets you down, so I generally think Mech can get back up and make this fight interesting. I understand people playing Mech here, but I do hesitate. Like Matthews will have fight. He lands about 2 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he can. Sometimes he doesn't choose to wrestle though. Against Rustam Akhman, he didn't at all, and that could always bring Mech into the fight. So I see win conditions for Mech, but Matthews is also kind of an underrated striker. He doesn't land at a high rate, and a lot of like the stat nerds will kind of point that out during his, just and why they don't like playing him, I guess. But he's almost like a Leon Edwards, and even though he lands like 2.5 to 3 strikes per minute, he only absorbs like 2, just like Leon Edwards. So the ratio is actually just like it would be if someone was landing, a higher rate of strikes, like 4.5, they just got hit a little more. So I don't mind good ratios, I don't mind low strikes landed if your ratio is good, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I feel like I'm fucking up on this live chat. But so yeah, that's the thing about Matthews is he generally avoids strikes pretty well. And I could see him landing a takedown or 2. I don't know if he'll be able to control Mech a bit. I could have went a little deeper in this fight, but it seemed a little messy, and it's hard to know exactly what will happen because I don't know if Matthews will go for takedowns. So it's tough because some fights he does, some fights he doesn't. I think I guess I'm fine with Matthews being a little bit of a favorite because he has the takedown upside. But I think -200 is fine. It could maybe be a little closer, but I don't have strong opinions. Turner and Kulabau, I don't have strong opinions either here. I think that it's tough for me to know where Kulabau's at whenever he's going against a bunch of regional Australian fighters. It's just tough. So yeah, no strong opinions. Aguilar and Zubaira, I lean Aguilar here, but no play again. And I think the main issue with him, I overall like his takedown defense, and I think he's a better striker here, and he's got more strike diversity, and he lands at a much higher rate and much more consistently. Zubaira just doesn't land enough strikes, but Aguilar sometimes just doesn't put a stamp on, he doesn't have urgency sometimes on the feet. So I'm afraid that even if he's marginally winning the kickboxing in the first round or something, and he lets up one takedown at the end of the round, I could see Zubaira stealing rounds that way because Aguilar just doesn't consistently land throughout a round. And Zubaira even though he doesn't land at a high rate, he doesn't get hit much either, mostly because he's in top position a lot. But I see it. I can see this being kind of a round sequencing fight, like who gets their game going towards the end of the round, and I think it's just a fight that I want to avoid. If Aguilar demonstrated to me that he could land more strikes in general throughout a fight, then I would think I would be more inclined to play him. But he's my lean, but I could see this getting a little dicey. Mustafayev and Riddle, this is just a tough fight for me to call because Riddle, he looks like a pretty good kickboxer, pretty good prospect, but Malarkey is just kind of a grappler and not a very good striker, so it makes sense that Riddle just kind of beat him up in general. And Mustafayev just went, like I didn't think he was going to beat Fiziev at all. And he kind of gets bailed out with some of his power at times because he's not like a super consistent volume striker, and he just kind of, sometimes it's hard to call knockouts and big shots landing. Sometimes you just don't know. I think it's easier to predict round winners, so that's generally the type of fighters and the type of fights that I'm inclined to play. And it's sometimes just hard. It's kind of, Mustafayev is almost like Davison Figueiredo, where I never know what's going to happen in Davison fights because I don't know if he's going to hurt someone or not. And like, Davison didn't hurt Formiga, so he ended up losing pretty clean. But against Pantoja, he was just winning rounds off getting knockdowns and big shots landing, and sometimes it's just very, very hard for me to call, and I feel like there's a lot of variance in fights like that. So I don't really have a prediction for this Riddle-Mustafayev fight because I don't exactly know how good Riddle is, and Mustafayev just generally hurts people. And that's kind of how he wins, but he easily may not hurt Riddle and just kind of get boxed up, so I don't really know. And if you guys have any questions, just throw them in the live chat as well, and I'll get to them after the next few fights. There's 4 fights left. De Lima and Sassoli, this is kind of a mess. I think De Lima has proven to be the more technical kickboxer, and he can sometimes get top position and string together some decent takedowns. And Sassoli's a little unproven, so I don't really know. It's still a heavyweight fight, and a lot of shit could happen. I tend to think De Lima's going to win, but not too confident there at all. Kovacevic and Jan, a lot. Everyone's playing Jan, I feel, and I think she's the rightful favorite, but the thing about Carolina is even though she gets hit a lot, she's still tough and always coming forward, and she can get her clinch game going at times. And even against Alexa Grasso, she still landed like 90-something strikes in that fight. And I know she got boxed up and was at a big disadvantage in the hands. And Jan will probably be at a big advantage here. So I get why people think Jan is easy money, but the thing is, Grasso attempted 384 strikes in that fight, and Jan's never attempted. Jan's usually kind of in the 200s and a little lower, and I think she broke 300 attempted strikes once. And people get on me about stats, and they're like, watch the tape, and trust me, I do both. But there is very much a thing where like, it makes it a little easier to predict fights if you know about how many strikes someone throws. And Grasso did throw in that fight much more than Jan generally does. So it's not just a guarantee that Jan lands 142 significant strikes like Grasso did. But I do see stylistically and on the tape, Jan seems to have the better hands, and she'll probably land those counter straights a lot, I suspect. But like, Carolina's still tough, but I get it. Like, she's looked a little declined in the last few fights. But it's still a women's striking fight, and we learned with Andrea Lee and Lauren Murphy and many other fights that women's striking fights can get very, very weird. And just like a decently close round, and like if Jan gets a kick caught or something and Carolina ends up on top, and not that either of these girls land a lot of takedowns, but something like that can seal a round for either girl, honestly. So I would need a little better price tag than minus 270 to play Jan. I would need more like minus 150 is when I would kind of start thinking about it. So that's my thoughts. I do think Jan's going to win that fight, though. But minus 270s on women's striking fights, when there's not a huge volume edge, it's a little dicey, I think. Crute and I can't say this fucker's name. We'll just call him Lord because that's his nickname. Jimmy Crute and Lord. I tend to think Lord will have a pretty significant advantage on the feet here, and he's a good striker. He's got some good body shots, and he just lands in a lot of volume. I feel like he kind of showed bad fight IQ against OSP for just going for. It's like he tried to knock out OSP in the first 3 minutes, and then he kind of like got tired and gassed out and left himself vulnerable for some offensive OSP, and then OSP ended up getting the submission. So I don't like that, because what if he kind of goes after Crute and gasses out a little bit, and then Crute can maybe have some paths to victory after that. But I do think he's the better striker here, and I think he has a little more process to his game. Crute's just kind of wild. It's like he kind of just fights where the fight goes. So yeah, I don't really know. I think it's just kind of a wild fight, and I don't have much to say about it. And then Paul Felder and Dan Hooker. All the metrics show that Hooker is the rightful favorite, and I agree with the line. I think he should be about minus 160. It's also in his home country, so that's an advantage. I mean, we saw it with Dobson and Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood landed 33 to 23 strikes in round 2, and all 3 judges gave it to Dobson because Dobson won. He definitely probably landed some harder shots in that round, but the crowd was cheering when he was landing, so that could definitely be a factor in a pretty competitive fight, on paper. And this is pretty competitive on paper, so I think that's an edge Hooker. Hooker's also taller with, I think, a 5-inch reach advantage, and reach advantages statistically matter in the macro level. And a few stats that I kind of like found myself is Hooker defends head strikes at, I forgot exactly what it was, but it was 5% better than Felder. And I know that's not huge, but these little percentages matter. And anytime I kind of tweet out stats, I get some pushback from some people who have a little different philosophy than me. But it's not that I'm against looking at tape. I look at both, but I think stats can give you an edge, and this is a percentage game that we're playing. But Hooker, his defense is a little better, and he lands at a higher rate. And Felder, I think his career high on significant strikes is 60 or something. And Hooker has broken a lot higher than that consistently throughout his career. So, and I think Hooker's kind of improved in the last couple of years. Stylistically, I think Felder should pressure and try to, anytime Hooker throws a kick, I think Felder should try to catch it and come with a straight over the top. I do think that Edson is a much different fighter than Paul Felder, and Edson really had a ton of success with body kicks to Hooker and kind of punished him there, and then it opened up every other strike, like head strikes and things like that, and Felder doesn't really have that game. And Felder's striking defense is 50%, so I feel like Hooker, a high-volume striker, is going to land. So I feel like everything's advantage Hooker, but what gives me pause to play Hooker and why I'm not playing him is Felder's tough as fuck. And in a 5-round fight, striking fights are very high variance. Either guy can land a big strike at any point, and I expect Felder to kind of stay tough for a while, and this might end up going 5 rounds, so he could always land something in a 5-round fight. And he's just really tough in general, so I could see him just hanging in there, and Hooker can be hit. We've seen it throughout his career, so I could see him making it interesting as well. And Felder fought smart. He followed a game plan against Edson Barboza and really kind of pressured off the get-go. And Felder generally, maybe he comes in with a good game plan too, and just keeps it competitive. But that's pretty much all I got. I don't think I'm going to have many live chat questions. Someone said most confident pick. Most confident pick. I hate to like take the coward's answer, but I'm not really confident in any pick on this card, but I'll try to give you one. I don't want to just give you the heaviest favorite, even though like that's kind of what I agree with. But I think Kai Kara-France. I think that's my most. I just think there's a clear. Tyson Name doesn't really wrestle, so he's going to have to win a kickboxing fight where he just doesn't throw enough strikes. I think that's kind of the thing, but I still don't think I'd play Nam or play Kai Kara-France at minus 250 or whatever he is. So, but he's going to have to win on the feet because he's not really a wrestler. And Kai Kara-France shows good functional takedown defense. So, yeah. So he's going to have to win on the feet. Kai Kara-France is durable. So a KO will be tough. And I just don't see him outlanding Kai Kara-France in his home country and getting a decision in a 15-minute striking fight. He's too low volume. I think Kai Kara-France should win. But still, minus 250, I think the line's right. But... yeah, and then I think if you're going to play Jan also, like if you guys are set on playing Jan, I think you should play her decision line. I think it's like minus 130, and the difference between minus 130 and minus 270, I don't think she's going to finish Carolina. I think Carolina is very, very tough. Mech training with that Fabia guy is worrisome. Yeah, I read an article about that guy. It was on MMA Junkie. You guys should. I tweeted it out yesterday. Check my Twitter. It was fucking hilarious. I was laughing hard. But yeah, that guy kind of seems a little insane. But at the same time, like Mech is what he is. So I don't always like. I feel like he'll just kind of show up and be scrappy, tough, come forward, and will try to scramble out of position. So I feel like he'll still kind of be what he usually is in that fight. But yeah, that guy's fucking nuts. I totally agree. But honestly, that's all I have right now. And I'm going to do a live chat again tomorrow after the fight card. And I'm actually picking up a dog tomorrow, so maybe I'll bring him in here during the live chat and you guys can meet him. He's like 8 weeks, so he's going to be a little guy. But I'll... if you have any questions, comment below or DM me on Twitter. And thanks so much for the couple participants that I had. And I'm going to do these every Friday like I've been saying. And I do have picks next week. Sorry I don't really have anything this week. I think it's just kind of a chaotic card. But I do have picks for next week, so I'll be talking about them on the videos next week. But thank you so much, guys.